it is often with a sense of wonder that I look back upon the days I shared with my remarkable friend. Sherlock Holmes. To dwell in close companionship with a mind so extraordinary was at once a privilege and a trial, for his intellect seldom slumbered and his thirst for mystery seemed unquenchable. Among the many adventures I chronicled, there is one case in particular which remains etched in my memory, not solely for its puzzles and deceptions, but for the peculiar blend of dread and relief which hung upon it. I speak, of course, of the affair known to the public as the adventure of the Norwood builder. The year was 1894, and London was still adjusting to Holmes's return from his supposed death at the Reichenbach Falls. For myself, I had rejoined my practice, though I often found myself drawn back to Baker Street, to the ruins where I had lived and learned so much. It was there, one autumn morning, that the case commenced, when a troubled young man by the name of John Hector Macfarlane burst upon our threshold. "Holmes," I said as we sat at breakfast that morning, "there is something quite refreshing in the thought that life, for once, seems calm. You have had no client these past days. Might we enjoy this reprieve?"
Calm, my dear Watson. Holmes leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin, the faintest gleam of amusement playing at his lips. London never truly rests. Even now there is turmoil, only it has not yet knocked upon our door.
And as if the great detective had summoned fate itself, a sharp rapping sounded at the door below. Mrs. Hudson ushered up a tall, pale young man whose clothes bore the dust of hurried travel and whose eyes darted nervously as if seeking safety in every corner.
Mr. Holmes. Dr. Watson, thank heaven you are here. I am in dreadful need of counsel. I am accused of murder.
"Murder?" I exclaimed, rising from my chair. "Surely there must be some mistake."
Holmes's gaze sharpened. He gestured for the man to sit. "Compose yourself, sir. Begin at the beginning. What is your name?"
"John Hector Macfarlane, solicitor of Blackheath. The police are already seeking me. I came straight here, for I was told you alone might save me. Which—"
His words were half choked with fear, and his trembling hands betrayed the severity of his plight. Holmes watched him keenly, not unkindly, but with that piercing attention which weighed every inflection and glance.
"You speak of an accusation. Who is said to be your victim?"
"Jonas Oldacre, sir, a retired builder of Norwood. The police claim he is dead, murdered in his own home, and that I am the culprit."
"This is monstrous. How could such a charge arise?"
"I know not, doctor. I scarcely knew the man, yet they say I viewed him, struck him down, and burned his body. I swear to you both, I am innocent."
Holmes leaned forward, eyes narrowing with intensity. "Tell us everything, Mr. Macfarlane. Hold nothing back, however trivial. The truth lies buried within the smallest of details."
And so, with halting breath, Macfarlane recounted the tale which brought him into this terrible web of suspicion. "Steeds!"
"I had never met Mr. Oldacre until yesterday morning. He called upon me at my offices in Blackheath. He said he knew my parents years ago, and wished to make a will, Naturally, I prepared to take down his instructions, but imagine my astonishment when he declared me the chief beneficiary."
"You, a stranger?"
"Yes, doctor, I could scarce believe it. He said he had no close kin and took a fancy to me for the sake of old friendship with my family. He pressed me to visit his house that very evening at Norwood so that the documents might be signed. I went, of course. There he produced lumber rooms filled with papers, deeds, and accounts. He bade me examine them, claiming they must all be settled before his death. It grew late, very late. He grew strangely excited, urging me again and again to sign papers and place my name upon receipts. At last I left him, weary and bewildered, but with no inkling of wrong."
And then?
"This morning I was roused from bed by the police. They charged me with having murdered Oldacre in the night, burning his body in a great pile of timber in his back garden. They declare my stick was found near the remains, and that my visit was but a cloak for crime. I swear to you, gentlemen, I left him alive and well."
His voice broke, and he buried his face in his hands. "Holmes, surely this poor fellow is the victim of some malicious plot. The evidence may be circumstantial, but it is far from conclusive."
Circumstantial, yes, yet sufficiently strong that the police, led by Inspector Lestrade, no doubt have acted swiftly. Fear not, Mr. Macfarlane. Your case interests me exceedingly. Tell me, did you observe anything peculiar in Oldacre's demeanour?
"Only that he was strangely secretive and irritable. He would not let me glance at certain papers, thrusting them hastily into drawers. And when I rose to depart, he pressed me to walk by the garden path rather than the front gate. I thought little of it at the time."
The devil's in those little things, as I oft remind my good Watson. A will in your favour, and a fire in his yard. It has the flavour of design. I must see Norwood at once.
Shall I accompany you?
Naturally, Watson. You are my right hand. Come, we must lose no time, for the police will have set their machinery in motion, and once it grinds, it crushes the innocent as readily as the guilty.
By midday we had reached the grim little villa at Lower Norwood. The air hung thick with the acrid stench of charred wood, and blackened beams rose like skeletal fingers against the grey sky. Inspector Lestrade, brisk and confident as ever, was already on the ground, directing constables with a sense of triumph and finality.
Ah, Holmes, Dr. Watson, you arrive at the right time. We have our man, and the case is as plain as daylight.
So I hear, Lestrade. You are prepared then to close your ledger upon young Macfarlane?
Indeed I am. The motive is clear, the evidence overwhelming. Here is the young man's stick, found beside the ashes. Here, his fingerprints upon the documents. And here, the remains of a human body, consumed in the fire. What more do you ask?
But surely you cannot condemn a man upon such flimsy grounds. Many a stick may be misplaced, and fingerprints are natural enough upon papers he was invited to sign.
Come now, doctor. You see the will, you see the fire, you see the opportunity. I'll have him behind bars before nightfall.
Holmes stooped over the charred heap, his long fingers sifting through the ashes with delicate precision. His hawk-like profile stood out in sharp relief, his eyes glittering with suppressed energy. Remarkable, truly remarkable, yet you are certain, Lestrade, that a human body was burned here?
Certain as my own badge. Fragments of bone, unmistakable. The pathologist confirms it.
Holmes held up a blackened scrap between thumb and forefinger. Bone, perhaps, or perhaps not. We mustn't let enthusiasm outrun reason.
He paced slowly about the garden, examining the scorched earth, the timber stacked nearby, the hedge beyond. Then he entered the villa itself, every sense alert. I followed close, though I confess the gloom of that desolate house sent chills along my spine.
Note, Watson, the disorder here, the scattered papers, the overturned chair. Yet see how little dust lies upon the mantel. Our builder was meticulous in his habits. Strange, then, that he should leave matters in such disarray.
You suspect this scene was contrived?
Elementary, but let us gather more before we pronounce judgment. A puzzle half seen is no puzzle solved.
And so Holmes continued his examination, his keen eyes missing nothing: the scuff of a boot, his Jonas, the smear of wax, the curious absence of certain papers where others lay strewn. Meanwhile, Lestrade busied himself with officers, convinced his case was complete.
You'll forgive me, Holmes, if I say you sometimes chase shadows. But here we have substance. A body burned, a fortune gained, a solicitor's betrayal. You cannot deny it fits.
Holmes smiled thinly, tapping his long fingers together. Oh, it fits, Lestrade. It fits most admirably, so admirably that I mistrust it at once. Nature is seldom so obliging as to furnish detectives with cases neatly tied in ribbon.
Could see by the inspector's frown that he had little patience for Holmes's doubts, but I knew my friend too well. When his voice grew quiet and his eyes took on that faraway gleam, it meant the wheels of deduction were turning, and some hidden truth lay just beyond our grasp. Thus began the affair of the Norwood builder, Kabich, a case that would test our wits against deception most artful and lead us into perils unforeseen. The investigation at Norwood was far from concluded, though Inspector Lestrade was confident enough to declare the matter settled. Holmes, however, had assumed that air of quiet concentration which I had come to recognize as the prelude to discovery. While the police paraded their evidence, he stooped and prowled through the dim rooms and scotched garden like a bloodhound upon the scent. I, too, endeavored to exercise the methods he had so often demonstrated, though with lesser success, for the mind of Sherlock Holmes moved in channels inaccessible to ordinary men. Holmes, I whispered as we moved down the narrow corridor of the villa, do you truly think this man Oldacre dead? I cannot reconcile his sudden generosity toward Macfarlane with a crime so dreadful.
Watson, Holmes replied without glancing up, his magnifying lens pressed close to a door frame. I think nothing. I only observe. It is the curse of mankind to theorize before one has data. That, my dear fellow, is the ruin of all judgment.
He tapped the woodwork, noting faint scratches invisible to my untrained eye. Then he drew out a pocket rule, measuring with precise deliberation, murmuring to himself, "What do you perceive there, Holmes? To me it seems but an ordinary door."
An ordinary door indeed, and yet, do you see the mark of pressure at the jamb? Observe the indentation, so faint yet undeniable. Something heavy has been pressed here, Watson. Something unnatural in a household where no such weight should rest.
He passed on, stooping to gather a shred of charred fabric from beneath the fireplace. His eyes gleamed as he held it to the light.
Curious, very curious. Does this appear to you like the cloth of a gentleman's coat?
Why, yes, though singed beyond recognition.
And yet it is not cloth at all, but a coarse rag, such as builders employ to wipe mortar from their hands. Hardly the garment of a man slain at supper. You perceive the difficulty?
I began to sense that the tale of Oldacre's fiery end was not as the police supposed. Still, the evidence against Macfarlane seemed damning. I longed for some word of encouragement from Holmes, but he remained absorbed, darting from corner to corner like a hawk within its eyrie.
"Well, gentlemen," Lestrade announced as he entered the room, rubbing his hands with satisfaction, "I trust you are convinced. The magistrate will have no hesitation. Macfarlane's guilt is clear as the nose upon your face."
Holmes regarded him with quiet amusement. Indeed, then permit me to ask, where is the body?
"Why, there, in the ashes outside, we found charred bones sufficient to prove a human frame. Our pathologist—"
Bones, yes, but calf's bones, Lestrade, not human. Do not look so startled. Observe the curvature, the thickness. No trained anatomist could mistake them.
Lestrade flushed with annoyance.
"You speak with great confidence, Mr. Holmes, yet our expert was satisfied."
Then your expert is either a fool or a rogue. The remains are animal, not human. Until you produce the body of Jonas Oldacre, your case rests upon ashes and smoke.
For the first time that day, Lestrade seemed unsettled. He muttered something about verifying Holmes's assertion and hurried off. I could not suppress a thrill of admiration for my friend's audacity. "Holmes, you astound me. Do you mean Oldacre still lives?"
It is a possibility we must not exclude. Consider, a man of wealth, suddenly benevolent, then consumed in a fire so thorough that nothing remains but doubtful bones. Does it not strike you as, what shall we say, too convenient?
You believe it staged?
Precisely, the illusion of death manufactured with care. But to what end? That, Watson, is the crux of our puzzle.
We returned to Baker Street late that evening, tallying with us copies of the will which had been so precipitously drawn. Holmes spread the documents upon our table, his pipe sending up thin spirals of smoke as he read and reread each clause.
See here, Watson. Oldacre leaves everything, lands, houses, securities, to young Macfarlane. Zai, Yesu, generous to a fault, is it not? But notice the peculiar form of certain bequests, written in haste, almost as though intended for effect rather than legality. Oldacre was no novice in affairs. Why should he draw so clumsy a will?
Perhaps he was eccentric or infirm.
Or perhaps he desired only that such a document exist to furnish motive for the supposed crime. Imagine Macfarlane, sole heir, accused of destroying his benefactor to secure the inheritance. The case writes itself. Ah!
I confess my admiration for Holmes's reasoning, though doubt gnawed at me. Yet if Oldacre staged his own death, what becomes of him now? Surely a man cannot vanish from the face of London without leaving trace.
Holmes smiled grimly. I guff! On the contrary, Watson, London is precisely the place to vanish. Among its millions, a single builder may hide as a pebble in the shingle. But I have no doubt he is nearer than we think.
That night, long after I had retired, Holmes's restless pacing in the sitting room roused me from uneasy slumber. Found him standing at the window, gazing out into the fog-bound street. Holmes, what keeps you wakeful? Surely the matter may wait till morning.
On the contrary, Watson, the game is afoot and time presses. I have been considering Oldacre's character. By all accounts, he was miserly, reclusive, and bitter in his dealings. Such a man does not turn philanthropist overnight. Overnight, his will is but a snare, and Macfarlane its victim.
Then you are convinced of Macfarlane's innocence.
As convinced as I am of your loyalty, my dear fellow. The boy is but a pawn. The true hand lies elsewhere. I must see Oldacre's house again, alone, under cover of darkness.
You cannot mean to venture to Norwood at this hour.
Indeed I do. A shadow in the night sees more than a dozen policemen in the day. Will you accompany me?
Of course, where you go, I follow. And so, muffled against the chill, we took a cab once more into the southern suburbs. I did bow, the mist curling like spectral fingers along the lamplit streets. At Oldacre's villa, we dismissed the driver and crept silently toward the garden. The embers of the great fire still smoldered, casting a dull red glow upon the ground. Holmes moved swiftly, his lantern hooded, his keen eyes searching every angle.
Watson, note how the fire was fed, timber piled with deliberate care, as though built for destruction rather than warmth. And see here, these footprints leading from the garden door to the hedge. Small, light, irregular. They do not belong to our heavy builder. A woman, perhaps, or a boy.
Then others were here that night?
Unquestionably. And here, observe the hedge itself. Broken twigs, crushed leaves. Someone passed through in haste. Where do they lead?
We followed the faint trail to a narrow lane beyond, but there it vanished into the mud and darkness. Holmes stood still, breathing the damp air, his face set in stern concentration.
He is not far, Watson. I feel him near, like a spider in the shadow of its own web. We must tread carefully, for our Norwood builder has laid his snares with devilish cunning.
By the following day, the newspapers blazed with headlines of the Norwood murder. Macfarlane's portrait appeared in every column. His reputation blasted before a jury was summoned. Crowds thronged outside the magistrate's office trying for justice. My heart ached for the poor young man who languished in a cell awaiting trial. Holmes, is there nothing we can do? Contrary, the evidence mounts against him, and public opinion clamors for his ruin.
Patience, Watson. Public opinion is a fickle mistress, blind and noisy. Truth requires silence and thought. We must wait upon our trap.
Trap? You have devised one?
I have, though it is not yet sprung. Tonight I shall need your aid, and perhaps even Lestrade's, though he is the last man I would choose for delicate work.
There was a glint of anticipation in his eyes, the same expression I had seen when the chase was at its height. I knew then that Holmes had discerned the outline of the builder's scheme, though he would not yet reveal it even to me. If there is one lesson I learned in my long association with Sherlock Holmes, it is that he never acted without design. To my eyes, his abrupt decisions often appeared reckless or even whimsical, yet I invariably discovered that each movement was but a step in a carefully measured dance. So it was in the affair of the Norwood builder, when, on the evening following our midnight search, he declared that the time had come to strike. Holmes, I asked, as we dined upon a modest supper at Baker Street, do you truly believe Jonas Oldacre lives? Quoting. The police, the press, the very public all cry out that he is dead.
The louder the chorus, Watson, the more I mistrust the song, Holmes replied, setting down his fork. A man of Oldacre's habits does not alter his nature overnight. His so-called murder is a masquerade contrived for purposes which will soon be clear. The difficulty lies in drawing the spider from his web.
He rose and paced the room, the familiar gleam of excitement in his eyes.
Tonight we lay the snare. I shall require Lestrade's assistance, unwilling though he may be, and yours, of course, my dear Watson. Bring your revolver. It may be needed, and with...
You alarm me, Holmes. Do you expect violence?
Not violence, perhaps, but desperation. A man who has schemed so elaborately will not yield his secret lightly.
Shortly thereafter, we presented ourselves at Scotland Yard, where we found Inspector Lestrade in a state of bustling self satisfaction, convinced his case was complete.
Well, Mr. Holmes, I hope you have satisfied your curiosity. Macfarlane will be committed tomorrow, and I doubt any jury in England will hesitate to convict.
A conviction would be a miscarriage of justice, Lestrade, Holmes said coolly. You have pursued a phantom while the living culprit walks free.
You astonish me, sir. And who is this living culprit, if not Macfarlane?
Holmes's eyes gleamed. Why, Jonas Oldacre himself.
Lestrade laughed aloud, though uneasily.
Come now, Mr. Holmes. The man was burned in his own yard.
No, Inspector, the bones are those of animals. The fire, a stage device. Oldacre lives hidden somewhere within reach of his villa. Tonight, with your aid, I shall prove it.
Brew, Lestrade stared at him, half in disbelief, half in reluctant fascination.
Very well, Mr. Holmes. You have led me a merry dance before, and I have learned to humor you. What is your plan?
A simple one. We return to Norwood this very night. We surround the house, and we wait.
The night was damp and oppressive, as we three crouched in the garden of Oldacre's villa, concealed amid the hedges. Heamy, the smouldering ruins of the great fire lay cold, yet the smell of char lingered in the air. The windows of the house were dark, the room silent as the grave. Holmes, I whispered, are you certain he is here? The place seems utterly deserted.
Patience, Watson. A spider never strays far from its web. Observe the upstairs shutters, newly fastened, yet dust lies undisturbed upon the lower sills. Someone occupies the upper rooms, though all appears lifeless below.
Lestrade shifted uncomfortably beside us, muttering about wild goose chases, but Holmes crouched motionless, every sense alert. Hours passed, the silence broken only by the distant bark of a dog and the rustle of leaves. At last, near midnight, I thought I detected a faint movement at an upper window. A shadow, brief but unmistakable. Holmes's hand tightened upon my arm.
You see, Watson, our quarry stirs. Now, Inspector, place your men at every exit. No one leaves this house unseen.
Sir Lestrade obeyed, though with evident skepticism. We waited again, hearts pounding in the chill air. Then, suddenly, from within the house, there came a faint creak of boards, followed by the scrape of a lock. Holmes sprang forward.
Quickly, Lestrade, the front door.
He burst into the villa just as a figure emerged from a hidden panel at the end of the passage. It was a small, wizened man with a face like parchment, his eyes glittering with malice. In his arms he carried a bundle of papers. Ink! At sight of us, he shrieked like a trapped animal and darted back toward the secret recess. But Holmes was upon him in an instant, seizing him by the collar.
Jonas Oldacre, I believe. Your masquerade is at an end.
Unhand me. I've done nothing. I am the victim.
The victim who fakes his own death, plants bones in a fire, and frames an innocent man. Spare us your protestations. The game is up.
Lestrade and his men surrounded the trembling figure, who sank upon a chair, his cunning eyes darting from face to face.
By heaven, Holmes, you were right. The man lives. But what devilry is this?
Devilry of the most deliberate kind. Oldacre has long hated Macfarlane's family. Years ago, the lad's mother spurned his suit. In bitterness, he conceived this scheme to ruin her son, lure him into a will, feign his own death, and leave Macfarlane to face the gallows for murder. A masterpiece of malice, Inspector, though not of execution.
Oldacre covered his face with his hands, his body shaking with impotent rage.
She laughed at me, mocked me. Her son shall suffer for it yet.
Monstrous. To destroy a young man's life for so petty a grudge.
Petty to you, Watson, but to a warped mind, insult festers into vengeance. Fortunately, his very thoroughness betrayed him. The will too neat, the fire too contrived, the absence of a body too convenient. and tonight his hunger to examine his papers lured him from his lair. A criminal always returns to his treasure.
By dawn, Oldacre was secured in custody, his vine plot laid bare before the astonished eyes of the law. Macfarlane was released from prison. Pained with relief and gratitude, he clasped Holmes's hand with fervent emotion.
Sir, you have saved my life, my honor, and all that is dear to me. I can never repay such a debt.
Holmes waved him off with quiet indifference. Howth, quiet indifference. Repay me, Mr. Macfarlane, by living an honest life and avoiding the snares of the vindictive. Your thanks are best given to the truth, which is its own reward.
Lestrade, though chagrined, was forced to acknowledge Holmes's triumph.
Well, Mr. Holmes, I'll not deny you've beaten me again. It seems I was too hasty, but the evidence was strong. Still, I am glad the lad is cleared.
Evidence is like clay, Inspector. In the wrong hands it builds a gallows, in the right it reveals innocence. You must learn to distinguish.
Conwyn, when at last we returned to Baker Street, I could not restrain my admiration. Holmes, you have achieved what seemed impossible. Yet tell me, when did your suspicions first take root?
From the first moment, Watson, the story was too pat, the will too generous, the fire too thorough. Life is seldom so symmetrical. Nature abhors perfect design, save in the schemes of villains. From that instant I smelled the hand of deceit.
And the hidden chamber? How did you divine its existence?
Elementary. The scratches upon the doorframe, the unnatural marks of pressure, the silence of the lower rooms while food had been recently consumed, all pointed to habitation above, yet without visible entrance. A builder, of all men, would know how to fashion a concealed retreat. Once the notion occurred, the rest was inevitable.
I shook my head in wonder. Holmes, your genius is beyond ordinary comprehension. I count myself fortunate to witness it, though I fear I shall never attain your skill.
Nonsense, Watson. You see, but you do not observe. The faculties are within you. They merely require discipline. Deduction is not magic, but the application of logic to observed fact. Train your eyes, and your mind will follow.
His modesty was more apparent than real, for he knew full well the brilliance of his own powers. Yet I could not begrudge him pride, for once again he had plucked innocence from the jaws of ruin and exposed villainy in its lair. Thus ended the affair of the Norwood builder, one of the most sinister and yet most satisfying of Holmes's many triumphs. For me, it was another lesson in the art of observation and the perils of premature judgment. For London, it was a reminder that beneath the soot and stone of our great city lurk schemes as dark as any in history, waiting only for the light of reason to unmask them. In the days that followed the exposure of Jonas Oldacre's villainy, case continued to reverberate across London. The newspapers, which only a week earlier had clamored for John Hector Macfarlane's conviction, now found themselves scrambling to adjust their tone. Headlines once shrieking of murder at Norwood transformed into grand proclamations of the builder's devilish plot unmasked. Such was the fickle nature of the press, ever swaying with the tides of revelation. For my part, I could not forget the pallid face of young Macfarlane as he first stumbled into our Baker Street rooms, declaring himself accused of murder. I could not forget either the look of relief in his eyes when Holmes revealed the truth and the boy walked free. Few sights are as moving as that of an innocent man reprieved from certain ruin. Holmes, I remarked one morning as we sat by the fire, you have done the young man an immeasurable service. Yet I wonder if he will ever fully recover from the ordeal. Tell you, to be branded murderer in the eyes of the city must leave a scar upon his spirit.
Undoubtedly, Holmes replied, blowing languid smoke from his pipe. Now, no. Society is quick to condemn and slow to absolve, but time heals many wounds, Watson. Macfarlane is young, with years yet to prove his worth. Let us hope he builds his reputation as sturdily as Oldacre built his houses.
And Oldacre himself? What fate awaits him?
He will stand trial, of course. His scheme was too deliberate. his malice too plain. The courts may hesitate to call it attempted murder, but fraud, conspiracy, and perversion of justice are crimes enough to ensure he spends his declining years in confinement.
I nodded, though I could not help but shiver at the recollection of that wizened face, twisted with hatred even as he was dragged from his lair. That a man should devote his twilight years to such vindictive cruelty struck me as one of the most lamentable spectacles of human folly. It was upon this occasion, more than any other, that I pressed Holmes to reveal the precise workings of his deduction. Holmes, you oft tell me I see without observing. Yet I did my utmost in Norwood. I noticed the scattered papers, the smell of charred wood, even the unnatural neatness of the will. Still, I arrived at no conclusion. What was it that guided you?
Holmes leaned back in his chair, a half smile upon his lips. You did well, Watson, better than you allow yourself to think. But recall what I have said. It is not merely what we see, but the proportion and relation of each fact. The scattered papers suggested disorder, yet the dust upon the mantels showed Oldacre to be a man of order. Contradiction, you see? Where contradiction exists, artifice lurks. The bones in the fire, pronounced human by the police, struck me as suspiciously fragmentary. A builder's yard provides many an animal carcass. The will was drawn with unseemly haste, yet Oldacre was reputed cautious in business. Another contradiction. Each strand alone might be overlooked, but together they wove a pattern too deliberate to ignore.
And the hidden chamber, was that not mere conjecture?
Not conjecture, Watson, necessity. The villa bore signs of habitation, yet no occupant was seen. The conclusion was inevitable, a concealed refuge. Once the possibility was admitted, the very structure of the house, with its hollow-sounding wall and curious scratches, betrayed the entrance.
He spoke with the calm authority of a teacher unfolding a principle to a pupil. I could not help but feel both humbled and inspired. Holmes, your logic shines like a beacon, yet I fear my own mind is unsuited to such clarity.
Nonsense, Watson. You possess the essential quality, an honest eye for fact. Were you less modest and more suspicious, you might rival me yet. Still, it is well as it is. My deductions would be barren indeed were they not warmed by your good sense and compassion.
It was rare for Holmes to pay me such a compliment, and I confess it warmed me far more than I let him see. Within a fortnight, Macfarlane came to Baker Street once more, bearing with him letters of thanks from his grateful parents. His relief was tempered by the knowledge that his professional reputation would require careful rebuilding, for many clients had already withdrawn their confidence.
Still, he said, I count myself fortunate beyond words. Without you, Mr. Holmes, I should be rotting in a cell, despised by all the world. Now, at least, I have a chance.
Make the most of it, sir, Holmes replied. A Jonary. Your name has been cleared, but reputations, like houses, require labor and honest foundations. Lay yours well, and you may yet stand taller than the man who sought your ruin.
Macfarlane left us with tears of gratitude in his eyes, while I reflected once more upon the peculiar power Holmes wielded, power not only to unravel mysteries, yes, but to alter the fates of men. Holmes, I said, do you ever consider how your work touches lives? To Macfarlane, you are not merely a detective, but a savior.
Savior? Hardly. I but restore balance where it has been disturbed. The law is a clumsy machine, Watson, apt to crush the wrong man. If my art can prevent that, so much the better. But I am no moralist. I pursue truth for its own sake.
Yet surely compassion moves you also?
He smiled thinly. Aha! Compassion is your province, my dear fellow. I leave the heart to you. I am content with the head.
The case provoked considerable discussion in legal and social circles. Some decried the folly of the police, who had nearly condemned an innocent man upon evidence so flimsy. Others debated whether Oldacre's actions could be considered attempted murder or merely an elaborate fraud. Still others, particularly among the legal profession, seized upon the affair as a cautionary tale against premature judgment. This alike For myself, I was struck most by the spectacle of society's fickleness. One week Macfarlane was reviled, the next he was pitied, yet in both cases he was but the same young man, his innocence unchanged. How dangerous it is, I thought, when opinion becomes judge, jury, and executioner before truth has spoken. A few evenings after Oldacre's capture, I found Holmes in rare repose, stretched upon the sofa with his violin cradled beneath his chin. He drew forth a melody so sweet and mournful that it seemed to carry away the very sorrows of the day. That is a fine air, Holmes. It suits the hour.
Music, Watson, is the only art that approaches deduction. Each note relates to another. Each phrase forms a whole. Discords resolve into harmony, as contradictions resolve into truth. Were I not a detective, I should be a musician.
And the word would be poorer for it, my friend. He smiled faintly at my words, then returned to his playing. The fire crackled softly. The lamplight glowed warm, and for a time the shadows of Norwood seemed far away. Looking back now, I see the Norwood Builder affair not merely as another triumph of Holmes's genius, but as a parable of justice. It showed me how thin the veil may be between guilt and innocence, how swiftly a man may be branded villain when he is but victim. It taught me, too, that evil often springs not from great ambitions, but from petty grudges, festered into monstrous shape. And above all, it deepened my appreciation of my friend, for though Holmes disclaimed sentiment, I could not doubt that beneath his cold reason there beat a heart as steadfast as any in England. Thus we close the chapter of Jonas Oldacre, the bitter builder of Norwood, whose malice was unmasked by the relentless clarity of Sherlock Holmes. Yet, even as the case faded into memory, I knew that others would come. New puzzles, new perils, and new opportunities for my friend to exercise his unmatched powers. For as long as London breathed, crime would never rest, and neither, I suspected, would Holmes. The affair of the Norwood builder might have concluded with Jonas Oldacre's capture and confession, yet for Sherlock Holmes and myself the echoes lingered far beyond the courtroom. Indeed, it was often the aftermath of a case that afforded me the richest reflection. Once the immediate peril had passed, I could look upon the events with calmer eyes and discern their true significance. Holmes, of course, wasted little thought upon aftermaths. Oh! To him, each solved mystery was but a stepping stone to the next. Yet I, ever more sentimental, found myself turning again and again to the image of young Macfarlane, first haggard with despair, then radiant with relief as the weight of accusation fell away. Such transformations reminded me that Holmes's victories were not mere intellectual games, but matters of flesh and blood, of human honor and survival. Jonas Oldacre's trial came swiftly. The evidence against him, once unearthed by Holmes, was irrefutable. The hidden chamber in his villa, the animal bones placed in the fire, the forged will designed to entrap Macfarlane, all were displayed before judge and jury. Hillier, Oldacre himself, dragged pale and trembling from his lair, could not deny the fact. His defense, such as it was, rested upon pleas of wounded pride and long-harbored bitterness.
She mocked me, he declared in a voice cracked with fury. Years ago, Macfarlane's mother scorned my hand. She laughed at me, and her son shall pay the price of her cruelty.
The court recoiled at the venom in his words. The jury required little deliberation. Compete. Oldacre was convicted of fraud, conspiracy, and the attempted perversion of justice. His sentence, though less severe than some clamored for, was sufficient to ensure that he would end his days behind prison walls, his dreams of vengeance buried with him. The newspapers feasted upon every detail, praising Holmes as the savior of an innocent man and the scourge of a villain. Yet Holmes himself dismissed the case with a wave of the hand.
The fellow was clever, Watson, but too clever. His scheme was like a theatrical illusion, impressive at a glance, but riddled with flaws once one looks closely. It is the commonplace details which betray such artifices.
Yet clever enough to have destroyed Macfarlane without your intervention. Fuzz Beaver, I shudder to think how near he came to the gallows.
Near. Yes, but fortune placed him in my path, and fortune, too, ensured Oldacre's downfall. Add, it is a dance, Watson, the eternal dance of crime and detection.
Hector Macfarlane, though acquitted, did not escape unscathed. In the merciless world of Victorian society, reputation once tarnished is slow to recover. Some clients returned to him, grateful that justice had prevailed. Others, more timid, held back, whispering doubts that lingered like smoke long after the fire was quenched. Oldacre, it is unjust, Holmes, I said one afternoon as we discussed the matter. Here is a young man blameless, yet condemned in the eyes of many by mere association with a crime. What chance has he to rebuild what was so cruelly shattered?
Holmes tacked the ash from his pipe, his expression remote. Reputation, Watson, is like china. Once cracked, it may be mended, but the flaw remains visible. Yet a man of integrity may, by long labor, render the crack insignificant. Macfarlane has that chance. It rests upon his character whether he succeeds.
You speak coldly, Holmes, but I know you hope for his success.
I hope for truth, Watson, nothing more. If he is worthy, the truth will serve him. If not, then better the world should know it.
To him well enough to recognize this as his peculiar form of sympathy. He could never cloak his reasoning in sentiment, yet beneath it lay a genuine wish for justice. The winter evenings that year found us often together at Baker Street, firelight flickering across the familiar walls to me, the air perfumed with the smoke of Holmes's shag tobacco. Since it was during these hours, when the bustle of London hushed and our cases lay between us, that Holmes revealed more of himself than in the heat of investigation. Tell me, Holmes, I ventured one night, do you never tire of the chase? The constant strain of unmasking deceit, of staring into the minds of criminals, it must weigh upon you.
He looked at me with that far-away gaze of his, violin resting loosely in his hand. It is my nature, Watson. The hunter does not tire of the hunt, nor the musician of his art. Crime is the note, deduction, the harmony. Without it, life would be intolerably dull.
And yet, might there not be peace and quiet years free of puzzles and peril?
For you, perhaps, my friend, you'll thrive upon life's simple comforts. But for me, peace is the slow death of the mind. Better the storm than the stagnant pool.
There was no arguing with him, as he was, an intellect forged for conflict, for pursuit, for revelation. I could only marvel and be grateful that such a mind chose to stand upon the side of justice. I confess, too, that I sought to apply Holmes's lessons in my own small way. In my medical practice, I began to observe more keenly, to question more carefully. Patient's gait, a line of fatigue upon the brow, the faint odor of a chemical upon the coat, all these I sought to interpret, recalling Holmes's insistence that there is nothing so small as to be unimportant. Ah! Yet I never deceived myself. Where Holmes built palaces of inference, I could only lay modest cottages of observation. Still, it pleased me to think that I walked, however humbly, in his great shadow. Some weeks after Oldacre's trial, Inspector Lestrade called upon us, his manner uncommonly cordial.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, I thought it only right to thank you. The Yard has taken some bruising over the Norwood affair, but better a bruised bride than a ruined innocent. I cannot deny. You saw more clearly than we.
It is no discredit to be deceived by a clever rogue, Inspector. Holmes replied, what matters is that truth prevailed.
Still, you've taught us a lesson. I dare say I'll look twice at the evidence next time before declaring the case closed.
Holmes gave a thin smile, while I thought privately that Lestrade's humility, rare though it was, did him credit. And so the Norwood builder passed into history, another page in the chronicles of Sherlock Holmes. As I set down these words, I hear again the echo of Holmes's voice in our quiet sitting room, calm, incisive, unsentimental, yet always piercing to the heart of truth. I see again the frightened face of Macfarlane, the malevolent glare of Oldacre, the bustling confidence of Lestrade. I see the dark villa at Norwood, the secret chamber, the glow of dying embers in the garden where innocence was nearly consumed. And above all, I see Holmes himself, tall, lean, hawk-faced, with eyes that seemed to pierce the veil of reality. To the world, he was a detective. To me, he was more a friend, a teacher, a guardian of reason in an often unreasonable world. Holmes, I said one night, as we sat in companionable silence, do you ever wonder how you shall be remembered? Whether the world will see you as I do?
He raised his brows slightly. As you do, Watson? I fear that is a romantic vision. The world will remember me, if at all, as a cold, calculating machine.
Aye, then the world will be wrong, for though you deny it, your work springs from more than logic. It springs from a profound sense of justice, even compassion, though you cloak it in reasoning. that, Holmes, is your true legacy.
For a moment, his expression softened, and he inclined his head. Perhaps you are right, my dear fellow, but whether or not the world sees it, I am content that you do.
With that, he lifted his violin once more, and the strains of a haunting melody filled the air. I sat listening, warmed by the fire and by the knowledge that I had borne witness to greatness, not only of intellect, but of spirit. Thus ended, for us, the strange and terrible business of the Norwood builder, and though many adventures would follow, I shall always remember that autumn as the time when Sherlock Holmes once more proved that truth, however obscured by cunning, cannot be extinguished but shines forth in the end like a beacon through the fog of London.